I think this morning what we heard is that the new post-2015 agenda is probably going to cost a lot. I'm hearing numbers that go from $2 to $3 trillion. And the news we heard this morning is that there's plenty of money out there. What I thought I would do very quickly is to look at the, experience of the MDGs and what we've learned from it to see if we can get a glimpse of how we may want to frame the issues as we get into the post-2015 agenda. I think one thing that's undeniable is that the MDG framework has influenced behavior. If we look at most of the policy instruments in the developing world after 2005, you'll find that also almost all of them consistently try to align with the MDGs. And this is quite significant considering that they stay consistent despite the fact that you change governments. So for example, when I went into government in 2012, I found that almost all my predecessors had committed into their strategies to the MDGs. It's also quite significant because most of these guys didn't quite run on reduction of maternal mortality or gender equity. They ran on building roads, on agricultural inputs, etc. But they had to stay consistent with it because it was part of the framework. Now, the MDGs also influenced, to a great extent, all the sector strategies. Almost every health strategy you look at in the past 10 years, you'll find that there's a reference to these targets. And they've influenced regional commitments. In Africa, for example, you've had the Maputo commitments and all sorts of commitments. Now, what's missing in this table, as you can see, is really change in behavior of the private sector. And I think this is an important consideration to make when we talk about the post-2015 agenda, because for it to work, we will have to be able to influence the private sector. And this is the point that we wanted to make here. I think the second point I want to make is that the MDG framework certainly led to results. And this is just a few, particularly in the health sector. I mean, when you look at countries like Malawi, Liberia, Ethiopia, Timor-Leste, that were able to reduce their under 5 mortalities within this time frame, I think that's quite a significant achievement. When you look at maternal mortality, when you look at HIV/AIDS, I think this progress was directly linked to the commitment to the MDGs. I remember in 2004, Haiti was one of the first countries to actually get funding from the Global Fund. And the concept of the MDGs and the funding that came with it not only influenced how funding was allocated, but it was really the first time that the government and the different stakeholders were getting together to plan differently. The Global Fund, because of the resources it brought, forced a certain way of planning on our governments, which proved to be actually quite constructive. So in a way, the MDG framework and the funding and the resources that align with it not just brought, I think, very tangible results, but also changed the way the different stakeholders behave around what would otherwise be a normative framework only. The third point is, I think, and maybe that's the negative, is that it is narrowly focused. So what we saw with the MDGs is that you can see improvements in targeted health outcomes, while no improvements in health systems. And this is because in countries like mine, for example, you would find hundreds of millions of dollars to pay for vaccination campaigns, but no money to pay for community health workers or basic infrastructure or supply chain. This is the same thing for education. There was a focus for us to get the numbers, but unfortunately no one wanted to pay for training of teachers. So the systemic parts were completely left out, and the government's not having the resources, and a lot of these issues are largely dependent on ODA flows. It led to results that are very specific and left, I think, outside the other systemic issues unaddressed because of lack of resources. And I think this is an important lesson to consider as we look at the post-2015 agenda. And this is my last slide, I promise. So I think some of the implications as we think about the post-2015 agenda are quite clear. The first, and I think it was said a few minutes ago, is that the principles of government ownership and leadership, I think, are undeniable and must be reinforced. But the second point is implementation will probably be our greatest challenge. I ask myself that in January 2016, when the president of Liberia, president of Central African Republic, president of Haiti wakes up in January and looks at this new post-2015 agenda, they will be asking themselves, what does this mean for me operationally? How will I reconcile all these goals? How will I sequence these investments? How will I prioritize? It may actually create a situation whereby we've just given opportunity for governments to say, well, you know, I can't do all 16. Infrastructure is what I want to do. And we go back into an era where some of the more important issues that would otherwise not find their space on the development agenda become neglected. I think this is something in the international community we have to watch for. we've all agreed that it's going to take a mix of funding modalities, and I know ODI and a lot of others are doing some innovative thinking about some of the solutions. And I think that's a good thing. But keeping in mind that this funding will only make sense if it's an integral part of the whole framework, and that it encourages and supports incentives that will influence behaviors of the different stakeholders, including the private sector. And I want to give you an example of something that's happening now. This will create, I think, new opportunities for old actors. In UNOPS right now, we're being asked by several partners to help play the role of an honest broker, help the conversation between the private sectors and the developing governments so that private sector can come in and finance. This is an example in the energy sector. They're asking us to go to countries, help the governments develop bankable products, come back to investors, help negotiate the trends so that private investment can actually come through. So what's going to happen, I think, in the next few years is that for us to achieve this partnership in a very effective way, it will require traditional actors to play different and more innovative roles. So, I think I'll stop here and just create enough time for us to really have a debate on this. And these are, I think, some of the most important points that I take back from the past 10 years.
Gary, thanks. I mean, I'm going to make just a couple of observations before inviting Annelies to talk. I mean, just on what you said, because it was very helpful. But, this point about it's led to vaccinations, not health systems. In a sense, that's not what was meant to happen. We had healthcare systems at the beginning of this century in developing countries which were overly directed to powerful middle-class urban elites' health needs. So we said, what's the measure which is going to force a reallocation of health resources towards poor people in slums or rural areas? And we felt that these measures, if they were to move, the only way you could do it was to shift your health priorities away from that kind of capital city middle class thing to these. What we didn't see was that instead it was going to lead to people saying, well, let's just narrowly target that specific outcome. Let's just do vaccination, not total healthcare systems. And, that was an error which had a silver lining to it, because these vaccination and one cause funds raised huge amounts of money additional. So in terms of goal 8 and resource mobilization, it was quite successful. But you're completely correct to point to this diversion from the real intention. And of course, again, you come back to the next set of goals, which is that on a larger scale, because essentially these goals are this time round, one for every single cause almost. And so to your point of when these guys wake up in January 2016, how they're going to do it, my instinct would be to go right back to bed and pull a blanket over my head. Annelies.